So I was thinking about the devil card this morning, and there is another way of looking at that archetype. This notion of an oppositional force, that there is some sort of oppositional force built into the cosmos, built into the structure of being, that tests us. We see this in the Bible with the story of Job, for example, or for instance in the New Testament when Jesus goes into the desert to fast for 40 days and there is confronted by the devil who tempts him in various ways. And there is this sense that whenever we are about to reach a new higher state of consciousness, a new more expanded state of being, maybe this comes through our spiritual practice, or maybe we just decide to turn over a new leaf in our life, decide to get our shit together, maybe we decide to give up an addiction, or maybe to take on a new healthier lifestyle, anything where we feel we're called to a more integrated higher state of being. Often you will find that there is this very strange oppositional force that will begin to manifest in your life at that critical moment, right? Just as you're about to make that change, you've come back from the meditation retreat and your mind is expanded and you're seeing this possibility of being a new, freer human being. You're seeing the possibility of living from a more connected, open-hearted place, for example. And at that very moment, you get this phone call from a relative that presses all your buttons in exactly the right way. And you haven't spoken to this relative for years. And suddenly this old pattern, this hurt, rises up from the depths and you have to deal with this titanic emotion, and it's as if it's met with this new emergent state of consciousness, and you can't help but think, was this not somehow orchestrated? Is there not some sort of oppositional force built into the cosmos that at this critical moment, at this critical juncture, where you're about to become freer, where you're about to raise your state of being to a new, higher, more spiritualized way of being and seeing, something comes to kind of pull you back down and keep you in bondage, right? And we see that symbolized on the card with the two figures who are chained to the plinth that the devil stands on. So we've got the male and the female figure, and there is this sense of duality, male and female, sort of seeing things in black and white and being chained to a dualistic mindset, right? Not being able to see a holistic vision or an integrated, spiritualized kind of conception of the world, but there is this dualistic conception there built into the symbolism of the card. And there, of course, is the sense of being enslaved. And it is as if whenever we are about to manifest a freer state of consciousness, a higher state of consciousness, a new state of being, that this oppositional force manifests in our life. And it can happen, of course, as an inner psychological triggering. You maybe find that an old addiction resurfaces, a compulsion suddenly grips you, that you thought you dealt with, but it really grabs you very strongly, and you're gripped by this compulsion at a critical moment. And often enough, it can actually appear as an external force in the form of these really malefic synchronicities, things that go wrong, that kind of test you, that kind of tempt you to fall down, to kind of come down back into a more restricted, more dualistic, more enslaved, constricted, suffering, hellish state of being, right? It wants to keep you there. We see this in the narrative in the New Testament when the baby Jesus is born, right? And symbolizing the Christ consciousness, enlightened consciousness, you could say. King Herod hears about this and makes a decree, sends sends out forces to slay all the sons. And there is, of course, emblematic in the story, this oppositional force in the form of Herod. There's this new consciousness that is born, but there's this oppositional force that comes out to slay and annihilate it, right? And this isn't contained only within the Judeo-Christian tradition. We, of course, see the similar narrative in the enlightenment of the Buddha. He sits under the Bodhi tree, and at the moment of his enlightenment, or just at the precipice of his final enlightenment, his final liberation, the Lord of Death, Mara, realizes what's about to happen, that the Buddha is going to become absolutely free from the cycle of birth and death. And Mara sends his forces, the Maris, against the Buddha to disrupt this enlightenment process, his final enlightenment. And of course, it takes the form of various temptation, beautiful women first appear to the Buddha, and then various demonic forces shooting arrows and so on. And of course, the Buddha is victorious, but there is this sense that there is this oppositional force trying to block, trying to disrupt or interrupt the process of this more liberated state of being. By recognizing that as a principle in this card, that might be an interesting lens to view and interpret this card when it comes up in a reading for yourself. Are you in the process of turning over a new leaf? Have you taken up a new spiritual practice, or has your spiritual practice suddenly started bearing fruit? Have you started experiencing a higher state of consciousness? Then you're likely to experience this weird testing thing. And I don't want to get into a dualistic mindset, our paranoid mindset, where we say that there are literally evil forces at work in the world trying to stop us from being better human beings. Although there's probably a valid case to be made for that, I think. I think another more constructive way to see it is that there is this testing principle, this tempting principle built into the structure of being that is meant to test any higher evolutionary states of consciousness in us. Any new emergent states in us need to be tested. They need to see if they have what it takes to stabilize, right? It's a kind of a beta testing thing. And so this force kind of activates, and you have to deal with this insane barrage of stuff that kind of tries to knock you off your pedestal. And of course, this is a very old idea. We can trace this notion back to Zoroastrianism, which of course had a huge influence on the Abrahamic religions, where we have the god of light, Ahura Mazda, in sort of eternal oppositional conflict with Ahriman. And Ahriman is this kind of dark oppositional force that is working against the light. It's a strictly dualistic mindset, and of course this had a strong influence on Gnostic metaphysics, where we also have the notion of these archons, these beings that are kind of set over matter to keep us enslaved, keep man enslaved. A healthy and constructive way of looking at that is as a principle within the structure of being, within the structure of creation, that is kind of testing us, that is trying to see if this newer, higher state of being can in fact stand on its own. Are you worthy to embody this? And can you live it? Can you be this new way? I hope you found that interesting, and remember to like or to subscribe if you did. And until next time.